For the past 9 years, I have been tracking real estate markets across secondary and tertiary American cities, the ones most investors ignore completely, and I have watched something remarkable happen. While everyone piles into the same overpriced metros, chasing the same listings that get bid up 30% over asking in 72 hours, there are entire towns where you can buy a livable three-bedroom house for what most people spend on a used sedan. I'm talking about places where the median home price sits below $40,000. Not a typo, not a teardown, an actual house you can move into tomorrow. Number 8 on this list has homes regularly closing at $24,000 with no major structural issues, and most retirees scrolling Zillow assume the listing forgot a digit. These are not ghost towns. These are not flood zones. These are functioning communities with grocery stores, hospitals, and property tax bills so low you will check the county assessor twice to make sure they got the decimal in the right spot. Back in early 2023, when interest rates spiked and the coastal markets froze, I watched these towns keep moving inventory while Nashville and Boise sellers sat staring at expired listings for 9 months. Let me walk you through 11 American towns where affordability is not a marketing gimmick. It is just Tuesday. Gary, Indiana. I know what you are thinking. You have heard the reputation. You've seen the headlines. Stay with me, because the numbers tell a different story than the lazy stereotypes. The median home price in Gary right now hovers around $29,000. I am not talking about a vacant lot or a burned-out shell. I am talking about a standing structure with a roof, plumbing, and in many cases original hardwood floors under whatever carpet some landlord stapled down in 1987. For less than the cost of a base model economy car, you can own a single-family home outright in a city that sits 45 minutes from downtown Chicago on a good traffic day. Here is what nobody mentions when they write Gary off as uninhabitable. The South Shore line runs directly into the loop. That means access to one of the largest job markets in the country without paying Chicago rent or Chicago property taxes. Gary's annual property tax on a $30,000 home runs about $800. That is not monthly, that is annual. Compare that to Cook County, where the same size house, if you could even find it for under $300,000, would run you $6,000 a year minimum in property taxes alone. I spent a weekend in Gary last April walking through the Miller Beach neighborhood, which sits right on Lake Michigan and looks nothing like what most people picture. Clean streets, functional infrastructure, homes from the 1920s with intact front porches and stone foundations. I met a retired teacher who bought her house in cash for $32,000 in 2021. Put another 15 into updates she did not strictly need, but wanted anyway. And her total monthly carrying cost, including utilities, is under $400. She showed me her tax bill, $763 for the year. The trade-off is real, and you need to hear it without sugarcoating. Gary has higher crime in certain areas, the school system struggles, and some blocks look rough. You are not buying into a polished Sunbelt subdivision with an HOA that tickets you for the wrong shade of beige. You are buying into a legacy industrial city that got gutted when the steel mills closed and has spent 40 years figuring out what comes next. But if your goal is to own a home free and clear, eliminate a mortgage payment forever, and live in a place where your Social Security check or pension actually covers everything, Gary delivers. The homes selling under $30,000 are not unicorns. They are on the MLS right now. Search the 46408 zip code and see for yourself. Drop a comment right now and tell me which of these towns you are adding to your research list this week. I read every single one. And make sure you are subscribed, because next week I am breaking down the 10 mistakes I see retirees make when they move to low cost of living areas, including one financial trap that does not show up until tax season and has cost people thousands. You do not want to miss it. Cairo, Illinois. If you can find this town on a map without looking it up, you know more Midwest geography than 90% of Americans. It sits at the southern tip of Illinois, where the Ohio River meets the Mississippi, which makes it about as far south as you can get and still technically be in the Midwest. The median home price in Cairo is $18,000. Not a typo. 18,000. You can buy a whole house for what most people blow on a cruise or a used truck. I pulled up the listing history 2 weeks ago and found a 3-bedroom Victorian with 12-foot ceilings, original woodwork, and a wraparound porch listed at $14,900. The photos showed cosmetic wear, but no structural failure, no caved-in roof, no foundation cracks you could fit your fist into. Just an old house that needs paint and someone who cares. Cairo once had 15,000 residents. Now it has about 2,000. The population collapse is real, and you will feel it. This is not a town with a vibrant downtown farmers market and a new brewery opening next month. Half the commercial buildings are empty, the school consolidated. If you need a specialist doctor, you are driving to Paducah or Cape Girardeau. But here is the thing nobody talks about when they dismiss Cairo as a dead town. The cost of living is so low that retirees on fixed incomes can live without financial stress for the first time in decades. I talked to a man named Russell who moved to Cairo in 2020 after his wife passed, and he could not afford their place in southern Indiana anymore. He bought his house for $16,000 cash. No mortgage, no inspection, just a handshake and a title transfer. His property tax last year was $312. His utility bill in the winter, when he runs the space heaters, tops out around $90. He grows vegetables in the backyard, fishes the Mississippi twice a week, and his total monthly expenses run under $600, including everything. He told me he sleeps better now than he did when he was working full-time and making $50,000 a year because he is not afraid of his mailbox anymore. The isolation is the trade-off. If you need people around you, if you need coffee shops and gyms and social activities organized by someone else, Cairo will make you miserable. If you need quiet, if you need your money to stretch, if you need to stop making decisions based on what you can afford and start making them based on what you actually want, Cairo will let you breathe. The homes under 20,000 are real. They are on Zillow right now. Search the 62914 zip code and start scrolling. Flint, Michigan. Yes, that Flint. The one you have heard about. The one that became a punchline, and then a tragedy, and then a political football. Let me tell you what Flint actually looks like if you go there instead of just reading headlines. The median home price in Flint is $37,000. You can buy a solid brick bungalow with a functional furnace, a fenced yard, and a one-car garage for less than most people spend on a wedding. I am not talking about the houses in the North End that have been stripped for copper and left to rot. I am talking about the neighborhoods on the East Side and in the College Cultural District where people still live, still mow their lawns, still shovel their driveway in January. I walked through a listing last summer on Welch Boulevard, a 3-bedroom brick house listed at $31,000, original oak trim, working appliances. The roof had been replaced in 2019. The basement was dry. It needed cosmetic work, new flooring, paint, maybe some kitchen updates if you wanted to get fancy. But it was livable day one. The property taxes on that house ran $1,100 a year. $1,100. I know retirees in Florida paying more than that per month. Here is what changed in Flint that most people missed because the news cycle moved on. The water system got fixed. Not partially, not eventually. It got fixed. Independent testing shows Flint's water quality now meets federal standards and in some metrics beats the levels in cities that never had a crisis. That does not undo the betrayal. That does not give people back the years they spent wondering if their kids were being poisoned. But it does mean the infrastructure works. It means you can turn on the tap and drink the water and brush your teeth and not think about it. I met a retired electrician named Gene who bought his house in Flint for $28,000 in 2022. He is originally from the area, moved away for work, came back when he retired because he wanted to be near his grandkids and he could not afford to stay in the suburb where he had been renting. He put $12,000 into renovations, most of which he did himself, and he owns the place free and clear. His monthly carrying cost is under $300. He told me he wishes he had done it 5 years earlier. The trade-off here is reputation. You will tell people you live in Flint, and they will ask if you are okay. They will assume you made a desperate choice. You will get tired of explaining. But if you can handle that, if you can handle living in a city that the rest of the country wrote off, you can own a home for what most people spend on rent in a single year. The listings are real. Search the 48504 and 48507 zip codes and see for yourself. Danville, Illinois. This one flies under the radar completely. It is 2 hours south of Chicago, 40 minutes west of the Indiana border, and the median home price sits at $42,000. You can buy a move-in-ready 3-bedroom house with a yard, a garage, and a basement for about what you would spend on a used pickup truck. I pulled listings last month and found a 1950s ranch on a quarter-acre lot listed at $38,500. The photos showed dated interiors but clean mechanicals, a newer furnace, replacement windows, a roof that had another 10 years left. The seller had owned it outright and was moving into assisted living. No flippers involved, no investor markup, just a house being sold for what it was worth in that market. Danville used to be a railroad and manufacturing hub. It had 45,000 people in the 1970s. Now it has about 30,000. The downtown has empty storefronts. The big employers left. If you need a major metro nearby, you are out of luck. But if you need affordable stability, Danville has something most expensive cities lost decades ago. The property taxes on a $40,000 home in Danville run about $900 a year. The cost of utilities in a typical single-family home runs $100 to $130 a month, depending on the season. You can buy groceries at Walmart, Kroger, or County Market. You have a regional hospital with an emergency room and basic specialties. You have a public library, a community college, and a state park 10 minutes outside town. It is not sexy. It is not going to show up on some lifestyle blogger's list of hidden gems. But it works. I talked to a retired nurse named Patricia, who moved to Danville from Champaign in 2021. She sold her condo, paid off some medical debt, and bought a house in Danville for $36,000 cash. She spent another $8,000 updating the kitchen and bathroom work she hired out because she wanted it done right. Her total monthly cost of living, including property tax, insurance, utilities, groceries, and gas, runs about $1,100. She lives on Social Security and a small pension. She has money left over every month. She said that had not happened in 15 years. The trade-off is cultural. Danville is small, it is quiet, and it is not diverse. If you need a vibrant arts scene or a food culture beyond chain restaurants and diners, you will be disappointed. If you need your housing cost to disappear so you can finally live without financial fear, Danville will do exactly that. The homes are on the MLS right now. Search the 61832 zip code and start looking. Bessemer, Alabama. This is a steel town outside Birmingham that most people have never heard of unless they followed the Amazon union vote a few years back. The median home price in Bessemer is $53,000, and that number includes some of the nicer neighborhoods. If you are willing to buy something that needs cosmetic work, you can find houses in the low 30s all day long. I am talking about brick ranches from the 1960s with carports, fenced backyards, central heat and air, and foundations that are not going anywhere. I found a listing in March for a 3-bedroom brick house on Clarendon Avenue priced at $31,000. The interior photos showed worn carpet and outdated fixtures but no structural red flags, no sagging ceilings, no water damage, no foundation movement. It needed sweat equity, not a bulldozer. The property taxes in Bessemer on a $30,000 home run around $550 a year. Homeowners insurance in Alabama is higher than the Midwest. You are looking at around $70 to $90 a month, depending on the house and your credit. But even with that factored in, your total monthly carrying cost on a paid-off house stays well under $400. Bessemer sits 15 minutes from downtown Birmingham, which means access to a real city with jobs, hospitals, culture, and an airport without paying Birmingham prices. You can work in Birmingham, shop in Birmingham, see your doctors in Birmingham, and come home to a cost of living that does not bleed you dry. I met a retired truck driver named Leon, who bought his house in Bessemer for $34,000 in 2020. He paid cash from the sale of his previous place in Georgia. He told me the property taxes were so low he thought the county made a mistake. He called them twice. They told him that was the correct amount. He had been paying $4,200 a year in Georgia for a comparable house. Now he pays $563. His exact words were, "I should have done this 10 years ago." The trade-off in Bessemer is the same as most old southern industrial towns. The tax base is small. The schools struggle. Some neighborhoods look rough, and you need to know which blocks to avoid. Crime rates are higher than the suburbs. But if your priority is eliminating debt, owning a home outright, and living somewhere you can afford on a fixed income, Bessemer delivers. The listings are real, and they are available right now. Search the 35020 and 35022 zip codes. Pritchard, Alabama. This one is just outside Mobile, and it is one of the cheapest real estate markets in the country that still has functioning city services. The median home price in Pritchard is $31,000. I found a listing 2 weeks ago for a 3-bedroom concrete block house with a metal roof, a carport, and a big backyard, listed at $22,500. The photos showed an older interior, linoleum floors, laminate countertops, popcorn ceilings, but everything was intact. No holes in the walls, no missing appliances, no signs of abandonment. Just an old house being sold as is by an estate. The property taxes in Pritchard on a $25,000 home run, about $480 a year. You are 10 minutes from Mobile, which gives you access to the Gulf Coast, a regional airport, a deep water port, major hospitals, and Costco. You get big city proximity without big city costs. I talked to a woman named Shirley who bought her house in Pritchard for $27,000 in 2021 after she got priced out of her rental in Mobile. She was paying $1,200 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment that had mold issues and a landlord who did not return calls. She took what she had saved, bought a house cash, and now her only monthly payment is utilities. Her power bill runs about $110 in the summer when she runs the air conditioning. Her water and trash bill is $43 a month. She owns her home outright, and her total monthly housing cost is under $200. She said it changed her entire mental state. She is not afraid of eviction. She is not afraid of rent increases. She is not one emergency away from losing her housing. The house is hers. The trade-off in Pritchard is visible the moment you drive through. This is a low-income area. The infrastructure is aging. You will see boarded-up buildings and overgrown lots. Crime is a real concern, and you need to be smart about where you buy. But if you are looking at the alternative, which for a lot of retirees is paying $1,000+ a month in rent forever with no equity and no stability, Pritchard offers a way out. You can own a home free and clear for what most people spend on 6 months of rent. The listings are active right now. Search the 36610 zip code, Cumberland, Maryland. This is a small city tucked into the mountains of western Maryland, right on the border with West Virginia. It used to be a major railroad and coal hub. The population peaked around 40,000 in the 1950s and now sits around 19,000. The median home price is $68,000. And if you are flexible on condition, you can find solid brick row houses and Victorian-era homes in the low 40s. I looked at a listing in June for a 3-story brick townhouse on Baltimore Street priced at $42,000. It had original hardwood floors, high ceilings, a functional heating system, and a rooftop deck overlooking the valley. It needed updates. The kitchen was from 1983, and the bathroom had pink tile, but the bones were sound. The property taxes on a $40,000 home in Cumberland run about $800 a year. Maryland is not a low-tax state overall, but in these smaller Appalachian towns, the assessments stay reasonable because the market will not support higher valuations. Cumberland has something most ultra-low-cost towns do not: legitimate natural beauty. It sits in the Allegheny Mountains, along the Potomac River. You have trail systems, state parks, and rail trails for biking. If you like being outside, if you like seasons, if you like the idea of sitting on a porch and looking at ridgelines instead of strip malls, Cumberland gives you that. I met a retired federal employee named Richard, who moved to Cumberland from the D.C. suburbs in 2019. He sold his townhouse in Silver Spring for $470,000, paid off debt, and bought a 3-bedroom brick house in Cumberland for $51,000 cash. He pocketed the rest. He told me his property taxes dropped from $6,200 a year to $900. His homeowner's insurance dropped from $2,000 a year to $700. His total monthly carrying cost now, including utilities, is under $500. He hikes 4 days a week and volunteers at the local museum. He said he has more discretionary income now than he did when he was making 6 figures. The trade-off is isolation. Cumberland is 2 hours from anything resembling a metro area. If you need frequent access to major airports or specialized medical care, you are driving to Pittsburgh or Baltimore. The job market is nearly non-existent if you are not retired. But if your income is fixed and portable, if you value nature and quiet over convenience and stimulation, Cumberland is a legitimate option. The listings are real. Search the 21502 zip code, Wheeling, West Virginia. This is an old steel and manufacturing town on the Ohio River, right across the border from Ohio. It had about 60,000 people in the 1950s. Now, it has about 27,000. The median home price is $71,000, but the range is wild. You can find row houses and small single-family homes in decent neighborhoods for $35,000 to $45,000. I pulled a listing in May for a 2-bedroom brick row house in the Woodsdale neighborhood listed at $38,000. It had original hardwood, a updated kitchen, a full basement, and a fenced backyard. The photos looked move-in ready. No peeling paint, no sagging floors. Just a small, solid house being sold by someone who had lived there 40 years and was moving into care. The property taxes on a $40,000 home in Wheeling run about $700 a year. West Virginia has some of the lowest property taxes in the country because the state has no major metros to drive up assessments. Wheeling has real infrastructure. You have a hospital system, a community college, a revitalized downtown with local restaurants and a brewery, and proximity to Pittsburgh, which is only an hour north. You get access to a major metro without living in one. I talked to a retired accountant named Barbara who moved to Wheeling from suburban Cleveland in 2020. She bought a 3-bedroom house for $46,000 cash. Her property tax is $692 a year. Her homeowner's insurance is $61 a month. Her gas and electric bill averages $90. She has no mortgage, no rent, no landlord. Her total housing cost is under $300 a month. She told me she had been paying $1,900 a month to rent a 2-bedroom apartment in Cleveland and watching her savings disappear. Now she is rebuilding her emergency fund and she sleeps through the night. The trade-off in Wheeling is the same as most legacy Rust Belt towns. It is aging. It is shrinking. Some blocks look worn down. You will not find a booming job market or a nightlife scene. But if you are retired, if your income is fixed, if you need your money to go further than it ever has, Wheeling offers a path. The homes are on the MLS right now. Search the 26003 zip code, Pine Bluff, Arkansas. This is a small city, about 45 minutes southeast of Little Rock, and it is one of the most affordable markets I have ever tracked. The median home price is $44,000. You can buy a 3-bedroom brick house with a carport and a yard for $30,000 or less if you are willing to do minor repairs. I found a listing in April for a brick ranch on Hazel Street priced at $26,000. The photos showed cosmetic wear but solid structure. The roof looked intact. The windows were not broken. The HVAC was functional. It was not pretty, but it was livable. And the price reflected reality, not panic or desperation. The property taxes on a $30,000 home in Pine Bluff run about $570 a year. Arkansas has low property taxes and no city income tax, which means your carrying costs stay low even if you are living on a tight fixed income. Pine Bluff has struggled economically for decades. The population has been declining since the 80s. The downtown has empty buildings. The school system is underfunded. If you are moving there for opportunity or growth, you are making a mistake. But if you are moving there to eliminate your housing payment and live without the constant financial pressure that defines modern American life, Pine Bluff can do that. I met a retired factory worker named James who bought his house in Pine Bluff for $29,000 in 2021. He had been renting a mobile home in North Little Rock for $850 a month. He saved for 2 years, bought the house in cash, and now his total monthly cost of living is under $700, including everything. He fishes the Arkansas River 3 times a week. He grows tomatoes and okra in his backyard. He is not wealthy, but he is not stressed, and that is worth more than the aesthetic appeal of living somewhere trendy. The trade-off is real, and it is not subtle. Pine Bluff has high poverty and high crime. You need to research the neighborhoods carefully and avoid certain areas entirely. But there are pockets of stability, blocks where people have lived for decades and take care of their property, and if you can find one of those streets, you can buy a house for what most people spend on a used car. The listings are active. Search the 71601 and 71603 zip codes. Fairfield, Alabama. This is another Birmingham suburb, smaller than Bessemer, with a median home price that sits around $49,000. You can find brick houses from the 50s and 60s in the low 30s if you are patient and willing to close fast. I looked at a listing in late summer for a 3-bedroom brick ranch on a corner lot priced at $32,000. It had a carport, a chain-link fenced yard, and a layout that had not been touched since Carter was president. But the roof was solid, the foundation was level, and the mechanicals worked. The property taxes on a $30,000 home in Fairfield run about $520 a year. You are 15 minutes from downtown Birmingham, 10 minutes from the airport, and 5 minutes from major shopping. You get proximity to everything without paying for it. I talked to a retired VA employee named Carl who bought his house in Fairfield for $34,000 in 2022. He paid cash from his retirement account, took the tax hit, and decided it was worth it to never have a mortgage again. His property tax is $578 a year. His homeowner's insurance is $73 a month. His utilities average $110. He owns his home outright, and his total monthly carrying cost is under $400. He told me he had been paying $1,500 a month to rent a townhouse in Hoover, and every year the rent went up. Now he is done. The trade-off in Fairfield is the same as Bessemer and Pritchard. It is a low-income area. The schools are struggling. Crime is higher than the surrounding suburbs. You will not see trendy coffee shops or organic grocery stores. But if you are retired, if you are not raising kids, if your goal is to own a home and stop hemorrhaging money on rent, Fairfield works. The listings are real. Search the 35064 zip code. East Street, Louis, Illinois. This is the one most people will dismiss immediately. East Street, Louis has a reputation, and a lot of it is earned. But the median home price is $19,000. $19,000. You can buy a house, not a vacant lot, not a burned-out shell, but a standing structure with walls and a roof for less than the cost of a economy car. I pulled listings in early fall and found a 2-bedroom bungalow on North 42nd Street listed at $15,000. The photos showed an older interior, dated but intact, with no visible structural damage. It needed work. It needed cleaning and paint and new flooring, but it had bones. The property taxes on a $15,000 home in East Street, Louis, run about $430 a year. The tax base is small because the property values are so low, and the city struggles to fund services, which is part of the problem. But if your goal is to own a home free and clear for the price of a used sedan, it is possible here in a way it is not possible almost anywhere else in America. I met a man named Terrence who bought a house in East Street, Louis, for $18,000 in 2020. He is originally from the area. He knows which blocks to avoid and which ones are stable. He put another 10,000 into repairs, most of which he did himself. And he owns the place outright. His monthly cost of living is under $600 total. He works part-time at a warehouse across the river in Missouri and banks almost everything he makes. He told me he would rather own a rough house in a rough town than rent a decent apartment and build zero equity forever. The trade-off here is not small. East St. Louis has some of the highest crime rates in the country. The infrastructure is failing in some areas. You need to be street smart, you need to know people, and you need to be realistic about what you are walking into. This is not a move for someone looking for comfort or safety or community amenities. This is a move for someone who needs to escape rent, own something, and live on almost nothing. If that is your situation, East St. Louis offers a way. The listings are real. Search the 62005 and 62004 zip codes and decide for yourself. While everyone else is refreshing, Zillow in Nashville and Raleigh watching 3-bedroom houses get bid up to $400,000 by investors paying cash, you now know 11 towns where you can buy a livable home for what most people spend on a vacation or a used truck. These are not markets that will make you rich. These are markets that will let you stop being poor. They will let you eliminate a mortgage payment or a rent payment and live on a fixed income without fear. Some of these towns are rough, some are isolated. Some have reputations you will get tired of defending. But every single one of them has homes on the market right now for under $50,000, and in most cases under $35,000. With property tax bills so low, you will think the county made a mistake. The people who dismiss these places as unlivable have never had to choose between paying rent and paying for medication. They have never had to calculate whether they can afford to turn on the heat. If you have, you know exactly what I am talking about. Drop a comment right now and tell me which town you are researching this week. I read every one. And make sure you are subscribed because next week I am walking through the 10 biggest mistakes retirees make when they relocate to low-cost towns, including one financial trap that does not show up until you file taxes and has cost people thousands. You do not want to miss it.